Welcome to the Rational Egoist. I'm your host, Michael Liebowitz, and I'm being joined today by my absolute two favorite guests. In the bottom over there, we got Professor Andrew Bernstein. He's an objectivist. He's a philosopher. He's a professor. He's an author of numerous books, including his latest, Red Meat Village, and I highly recommend it. I've read it myself. Wrote a review, great book. And in the top right corner, we got the amazing James Stevens Valliant. He's a former prosecutor. He's a philosopher himself. He's affiliated with ARC UK, and he's written a couple books that are right behind him. We got Creating Christ, and we've got The Passion of Ayn Rand's Critics. Objectivist brothers, welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show. I always forget to say welcome back. Then I have to correct myself. Welcome back.
Good to be here, Michael. Thanks for having me on.
Always great here.
And by the way, Creating Christ is a really original book on the origin of Christianity, and I think everybody should read it.
Well,
yeah. I have it. I've not read it yet, but I did watch the documentary, The Passion of Ayn Rand's Critics. I did read.
It's so original and backed by evidence. So yeah,
thank you very much.
Yeah, it's eye-opening. Let's put
and
that.
What a great honor it is to be with you, Andy. My God, you are. What was this? Something like 43 years ago, I was attending a course at the New School for Social Research in Manhattan, and you were giving a course on objectivism. I still to this day use formulations that you gave me that are just perfect ways of explaining objectivism. So it's an honor and a thrill for me to be here with you.
Oh, well, thank you, Jim. I appreciate it, and you're welcome.
All right, can we? Now that we've had the mutual love fest. So there's actually an anecdote. I don't know if an anecdote is right too, but a story that you told me, Andy, that I want you to share before I tell the nature of the conversation today, because I think it captures it very well. I asked you if you had ever met Ayn Rand, and you said you met her twice. And one of the times you met her, you got her a glass of water. And I would just like you to tell us what happened when you got her that glass of water.
Yeah, it was at the Fort Hall Forum the night before her talk. She was very old by this time. It was a year or two before she passed away. Leonard Peikoff used to put on, a little shindig for those who leased his tapes, and so it was there. Ayn Rand didn't know me. We had never met, but she was talking about the Atlas Shrugged film project. What I remember is she said she wanted Clint Eastwood to play John Galt, which I thought was funny, and told a friend of mine. He said, I can't imagine Clinton without a gun in his hand. But anyhow, I asked Ayn Rand in a lull if I could get her a glass of water. She said, yes, please. Went and got her the water. I handed it to her, and she took the water, and she gave me, literally, no hyperbole, the most radiant smile I've ever seen in my life over the simple act of receiving a glass of water from a total stranger. Now, I had read, including from Bennett Cerf, that Ayn Rand could light up like a Christmas tree, over very simple things that delighted her. But I saw it in action. And you look into her eyes, and you could tell there's extraordinary genius there. Extraordinary, extraordinary intelligence. This was a genius. But it was the joie de vivre that really, really captivated me. I'd never seen anything like it before or since. It was striking.
So a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, I don't know. What the hell do I know about time? But anyways, Andy and I were talking, and we were talking about objectivists or claimed objectivists that I come across often, and I think we all come across them, that are very sort of robotic. They can cite chapter and verse, but they don't have the sort of pizzazz or the life impulse, the elan vital, if you will, right? And what you just explained to me about Ayn Rand tells me about somebody that's able to just value existence and really experience life. But in our conversation, we were talking, and you said some people, they have the mind of objectivism, but they don't have the heart. So I'm going to call this episode The Soul of an Objectivist, because I just happen to like soul better than heart.
I don't think, to correct you, Michael, but I don't think that was my formulation.
Oh, okay. Well, you can correct me by all means.
I said, and I was thinking of somebody in particular, but I'm not going to mention his name, but has the mind of an objectivist, but does not have the soul of a romantic.
Oh, yes, that was it. That was it. The Soul of a Romantic. So I'm going to title this episode Objectivist. You're right. And correction warranted. So, and I immediately, when you said that to me, I thought of Jim Valliant. Because the reason that I love having the two of you on the show, and I've now had a chance to spend time with both of you in person, because both of you are extremely bright, of course, and it's great to be able to sit around and we talk philosophy or whatever. But both of you have a zest for life and a personality that's great. It's very human in the best sense of the term. So before I get to Jim, because I knew right away I had to have the two of you on to discuss this. But so before I get to Jim, I want to ask you, what does that mean to you, the soul of a romantic or the soul of an objectivist, Andy?
Well, I mean, in the Romantic Manifesto, Ayn Rand defines romantic art, as the valuing school of art. That the heroes hold values passionately, and then they direct their own lives in pursuit of their values. So they have free will. They choose values, and they choose the actions to pursue those values. So when I say somebody has the soul of a romantic, I mean exactly what you said before, Michael. Somebody is a passionate valuer. I gave a course many years ago, how to be a passionate valuer, how to be an impassioned valuer. And I still think it's as many years ago, I still think it's a really good course with some good tips in there. But to put it in objectivist terms, reality adhering, life supporting or life promoting values, and to do so passionately. And then these values, whether you want to be a writer, or you want to raise a family of healthy children, or you want to start your own business, or you want to get a PhD in mathematics, or you want to get a black belt in karate, whatever it is, but you're passionate about it. And these are life affirming values. They're positive. It's not like you want to be a drug dealer or something, or a hitman for the mob. And you pursue these goals with great zest. It adds to your life this enormous positive energy that you then have. That to me is the soul of a romantic, a passionate valuer.
I've long believed that very quickly you can get a sense of a person's sense of life or their value orientation. I mean, obviously you can be wrong because you don't have time to make that assessment, but you can get a sense. And when my girlfriend and we went out to see Jim, and at first she was nervous. Oh, I don't know if he's going to like me. Maybe he's going to be judging me, but whatever, because, that's one of our things.
He's a prosecutor, for God's sake.
And I told her, don't worry, you're going to love this guy. And she absolutely loved Jim. And then when we were getting ready to go see Andy, she was nervous as well. I said, listen, you love Jim Valliant. You're going to love Andy. Trust me. Absolutely loved them. Because there's something in common. I mean, as different as the two of you are, one's from New York and one's from California, right? There's that value affinity, that zest for life that's just oozes out of the two of you. And so, Jim, when I first broached this topic to you, and a few weeks ago, and said, "Do you want to do this down the line?" What comes to your mind? Because you seem to know exactly what Andy was talking about, exactly what I was talking about when I used the term. I used the soul of an objectivist. So, what does that mean to you?
The curse of intellectuals is a boy, I'm going to use some fancy words here. A psychoepistemological. Let me put it this way: a mental approach, which we call rationalism. It's not a healthy approach. And what it does is it detaches your ideas from reality. Your concepts are floating, detached from the concrete observed reality. And what that also tends to do is tend to disconnect you. As you're disconnected in your theoretical, idea, the world, if you're disconnected from reality, you're going to be disconnected from your emotions, from your passions, from your motivations. The two go together. Emotional repression and being very logical and organizing your ideas, in a certain way. That's what intellectuals do. And it's radioactive to have any kind of personal interest or emotion. To them, that's the hallmark of subjectivity. And it is true that if you substitute emotions for rational thinking, that is the hallmark of subjectivity, to let your emotions do the cognitive driving. emotions aren't a tool of cognition, as Ayn Rand says. On the other hand, Ayn Rand is a deeply passionate person. You brought up Romantic Manifesto. For Ayn Rand, the point of art is to have an emotional experience, is to actually emotionally react to have a concrete stylized in such a way, like with maybe one of Andy's novels, to have concretes presented to you, but in such a stylized way that they evoke our deepest metaphysical ideas and values. It's what Ayn Rand called a metaphysical value judgment. Now, but for me to experience my highest, most abstract philosophical values, I need fuel. I need the motivation. I need the reward. And that alone the emotional world can provide. And it's all about my life. And so no matter how high my philosophical abstractions, the wonderful thing that art does, according to Ayn Rand, is it concretizes those values in such a way that I can immediately and emotionally experience it. I can get the motivation. I can get the reward, the juice out of my values. They're not just sitting on some abstract philosophical shelf. So the curse, as I say, of intellectuals is to tend to be rationalistic. And this applies to objectivists. There are, in my experience, a lot of objectivists who you could describe as emotionless robots. They've kind of got the line down, and they understand how this idea relates to this idea and how we validate this principle and that principle, but it doesn't seem to have been built into their souls so that they have this automatic reaction. And they're not feeding off that emotional reaction, nor are they using their emotions to help connect them to concretes, which Ayn Rand obviously did. Ayn Rand's own personality is a great instance of this. Leonard Peikoff has, in his biographical memoir of Ayn Rand, My 30 Years with Ayn Rand, describes her in just that way. She was a passionate valuer. She had favorites for everything. Her favorite food, her favorite color, her favorite, you name it, Ayn Rand had favorites. And even if they weren't her top favorite, she knew whether she really liked them or she didn't like them, or who cares, toss them aside. She had value implications attached to everything. And so Leonard would describe, I'm sitting there watching the Academy Awards with her, and she sees the streaker, and Leonard says, oh, lighthearted, youthful prank. Ayn Rand says, no, this is nihilism in action, and that she gives this connection to wider philosophy. She saw philosophy in everything, and she emotionally experienced it. She used her emotions as actually to guide her straight to the concretes that would be relevant to it. Well, you see what you're doing here is you're spitting on glamour as such. You're making a mockery of all these people and this event, the Academy Awards. And she could connect all the dots and could see that it was an assault on values as such. And from that perspective, she couldn't help but have an emotional reaction. So what really is strange, as Leonard points out, is that you could talk about Kant, very abstract, very not the most accessible of all philosophers, let me put it that way. And yet she would have the most intensely passionate reaction to that because she could see Adolf Hitler in the Immanuel. You mean consequences have nothing to do with values? That's a Holocaust waiting to happen in her head. You mean blood? It doesn't matter what the consequences are? She could instantly see from a deontological approach to ethics, this could have the most horrific consequences, and she emotionally reacted accordingly. And so I don't want to judge any particular objectivist intellectual, but I have seen this among objectivists. They tend to come off as passionless robots. Whereas if you really grasp what Ayn Rand's after, it's about your life here on Earth. Nothing could be more motivating. Nothing could be more inspiring. And so all the best moments in my life, whether it's art or something, just being, talking with you, going out and doing something with my buddy, and just having this completely 100% what she called non-contradictory joy, without any provisos, any asterisks, anything connected. When your thinking is integrated, and when your thinking is integrated with your life and your values, you are capable of a kind of a throw your head back, total enjoyment of that moment, a real metaphysical experience where all parts of your soul are working. Your logical mind and your passionate valuing are working in harmony. That's the vision of Ayn Rand, actually. So Ayn Rand that was her all over the place. She was an intense valuer. And she loved and she hated. She could tell you why she loved and hated it. You might not agree with what she loved and hated, or they differ in the degree, but intensely valuing is an essential part, I think, of the objectivist soul.
You mentioned logic and emotion because, of course, when we're talking about the soul of an objectivist or the soul of a romantic, we're largely talking about emotion, but it's important to keep in mind logic and emotion. And I'm going to see if I can get both of you into a little trouble here. So one of my favorite essays in the objectivist canon is The Psychology of Pleasure by Nathaniel Branden, because he talks about how important emotions are as the fuel, for our existence. To have that pleasure, it's the motive force behind our actions. And Ayn Rand even talks about happiness. While life is the standard, happiness is the purpose, right? Because the way I've always interpreted that as, if doing the right thing entails feeling shitty, right, then I don't want to do it. The whole reason I'm willing to act ethically is because it's good. It feels good. It's life affirming. And the whole point is, with the psychology of pleasure, that is, if you adopt the right values, logically evaluated and assessed according to the standard that is your own life, and then you act in pursuit of those values and achieve them and keep them, you're going to feel good. You're going to feel happy about it. So Andy, my question is for you is, in reading Ayn Rand, what are some of the more helpful essays in this regard that help to sort of internalize the spirit of objectivism?
Well, before I answer your question specifically, Michael, about essays, I'm reminded of something Ayn Rand said in the question and answer session at one of Leonard Peikoff's lectures. I don't remember the exact question, but it was, because this goes back to the late 70s. But somebody asked her, so, Miss Rand, so your philosophy claims that rationality is integral to every aspect of life. And Ayn Rand said, yes, that's right. And he said, well, what if you're walking, arm in arm in the moonlight with the man you love, or for another person with the woman he loves? What's the rational, thought process here? And I remember Ayn Rand's response was, when I'm walking arm in arm in the moonlight with the man I love, the thinking has already been done. And, I thought that was just a brilliant answer, because you're going to get to that point. You're going to make love. It's very romantic. You're going to make love. You're going to be lovers. And you want to know you can trust this person. You want to know that their character is upright. This is why, most responsible people, there's a courtship process before they become lovers. They go out on dates. They talk on the telephone a lot. There's probably, several weeks. Yeah, I read somewhere that, the average is three dates, before, the couple is in bed. But, you do a lot of talking on the phone, and, you see each other in different situations. And Ayn Rand's point was, a rationally responsible person, you think about what you see. You want to make sure. I have this feeling, and love at first sight is a big part of all of Ayn Rand's novels. But we're fallible beings. We can make errors. And so I have this emotional, Hank Reeder, the first time he sees Dagny, wants to rip her clothes off and, make love, to have sex with her right on the, on the flat, the flat car on the railroad. He has a feeling, but I said, well, I'm going to, I may have that feeling, but I'm going to find out, I'm going to think about this and, see the person in action. We're going to be together for a while. We're going to be dating, and I'm going to make an assessment, my most honest, rational assessment. Can I trust this person? Is his character strong? So that, I think, is a very, very insightful point. But to answer your question specifically, you know what my favorite Ayn Rand essay is? The Inexplicable Personal Alchemy in the new left anthology. I cry just thinking about it. Never mind. I sob when I read it. You guys, Jim, I know you know the essay. Michael, you remember the essay about the
I believe it's about the student protesters. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that one kid the judge sentenced him to prison for 3 years, and he said, for what did he say, for a minute or something, like for 10 seconds or 60 seconds on Red Square, I felt free, and for that I'll gladly take your 3 years. And
you're gonna make me cry.
yeah, it's so heartrending. And Ayn Rand talks about, don't sanction the Soviets, speak out against them, and maybe it's possible that this word of support this chokes me up. Word of support might reach those lonely children in Red Square. And it says, the commitment to freedom, not as an end in itself, because you need to be free to pursue values. You need to be free to live. And this is why freedom is sacred, because it's the value-laden political system. You're free to pursue your values. And that's what Ayn Rand's talking about these lonely children on Red Square. And it's heartbreaking. It's so touching. It's all, what Leonard Peikoff said somewhere, that Ayn Rand's canon, her literary canon, and to our point, some objectivists don't seem to realize Ayn Rand was a novelist first, foremost, and always. She's an artiste. She tells us herself that she became a philosopher because she wanted to create the ideal man. And to create the ideal man, she needed to know the theory of human nature. She needed to know ethics. She needed to know metaphysics and epistemology. So she became the greatest philosopher since Aristotle, as a secondary means to her primary literary goal. Try that sometime. But it's extraordinary. But they don't have the objectivists that we're talking about don't have the soul of a romantic. They don't really get that. But Leonard Peikoff's point that the leitmotif of Ayn Rand's literary canon is the role of values in human life. That's what it's all about. And we need rationality to identify what those proper values are, life-affirming values, and then how to achieve them, how to fulfill them. So rationality is the means, and value achievement and happiness and fulfilled life as the goal, as the ends. So you asking about her essays, The Inexplicable Personal Alchemy for sure, and then there's a dozen others that you can name, but that one is one I particularly love.
You mentioned Leonard Peikoff, and this is so interesting to me because the two of you both know him, and from somebody who I've read his books, I've seen a little bit of him on YouTube or whatever. I would have thought he's kind of a buttoned up, straight-laced kind of guy. Both of you described him in almost the exact same terms as just a lighthearted guy. Yeah. And that reminds me of what we're talking about is the soul of an objectivist. I think, Jim, you've actually described him as childlike in some ways. And I think that is, I wish more people can see that the way that you guys have described him to me. But so, Jim, I'll give you a chance. You can both do that, and let's see. It's a tough one to top. Andy's use of inexplicable personal alchemy, that was a tough one. But I want you to tell us your favorite essay that's relevant to the topic we're talking about, and you can tell us a little bit about Leonard too, if you want.
Well, the one Andy picked, actually, there were two or three that came to mind. Andy picked one of them. Another one I would really urge people to read is her. The description of her trip. She was an invited VIP to watch the launch of Apollo 11, the first moon mission where men actually walked on the moon. And she was. Hold
on 1 second. Let me show off Apollo and Dionysus. Just want to show off that I know what it is. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, here it's not her essay Apollo and Dionysus, where she's really interestingly comparing the space program to Woodstock. Here it's an essay she wrote just about the experience.
Oh, okay.
The concrete, she and her husband going down to Florida, watching it, experiencing it with other people, other people's anticipation, how they experienced it, all of what it implies about human rationality, human achievement. She was in love with achievement. She achieved greatness by defending human greatness. And so the essence, you want to know what the soul of an objectivist is? Look to this aspect of Ayn Rand. She once said, I can barely look straight across horizontally. I cannot bear to look down. I yearn to look up and admire and worship. That is it. So here was a moment, and she said, forget about government being involved. I know. Government probably shouldn't be doing this. Yeah. Put that aside. Look at
Yeah,
this.
we want Elon Musk to do it. Thumbs up.
Yeah, look at this human achievement here. Look at what this means about humanity. Look at what that, she says, forget everything else government might have done, but one flag planted on the moon is worth it all, as far as she was concerned, because what it says about human achievement, the power of the human mind, human dedication, and then talking about the emotional experience of those people in Florida watching it and just being emotionally blown away at the sight of human greatness. Now, so if you really want a nonfiction essay that gets to her sense of life, I would say read her essay, Apollo 11, where she simply describes the experience of going to Florida and being one of the invited VIPs there watching the launch. And she describes it as only a novelist, a real artist of words can describe it in, but she gets the essence of it. And it's so moving. It's absolutely thrilling. How can you, and then she talks about, of course, the negative, how people like Eric Sevareid were saying, oh, well, so long as there's hungry people on Earth, we ought not to be spending a dime on space travel. And she says, you miss it, Mr. Sevareid. You're getting it all wrong. This is what life is all about. The ability to worship great achievement, to see success, to see the power of the human mind, and to have that feeling, that real, she said, Ayn Rand is often called a rugged individualist. She talks in that essay about the actual sense of shared values. The only real sense of community there can be is this sense of shared values about this. And so I highly, highly, highly recommend. But Andy's right. Ayn Rand was an artist first and foremost. So if you want to know what Ayn Rand, you want to know the soul of an objectivist, her novels are the place to go, my friends. There's this sequence in her shortest, it's really a novella. It's almost like a prose poem. It's so beautifully written. Anthem. There's this sequence where the protagonist goes into the woods alone, discovering the freedom there, just testing his own strength and capacity becomes a value. Hunting and feeding himself becomes a value. He wants to be hungry again and re-experience it. And then the female protagonist meets him there, and he discovers that, well, maybe being all alone isn't the top thing. Maybe there are other important values. And there's a beautiful line where he says, and that night I learned that to hold the body of a woman in our arms was not a shame, but the highest ecstasy granted the race of men. You want to know Ayn Rand's love of existence, love of life, value orientation? Now, to get all those values, as Andy says, you've got to, when I met Holly, I've been married to her now for 28 years. We've lived together now for 30 years. When I first met her, when I first saw her, I knew they wanted to introduce me to this girl when I was back in my 20s, right? Oh, you got to meet her. You two guys will get along. I see her at a group gathering, and I said, oh, I hope that's the girl they want me to meet. I hope she's the one. And so it was lust at first sight, no doubt about it. But it was, because we shared Ayn Rand, we shared artistic values, we both loved Rachmaninoff, we both loved the same kind of rock and roll. And so as these things are happening, and I'm beginning to see her moral character and the values we share, I'm getting more and more serious about it. But for that very reason, I tell myself, stop, don't make the mistake you've done before, rush into it. And so I took time. It was weeks before we made love, because I wanted to make sure that this was everything I knew it would be. And when it finally did happen, it was a completely integrated experience. It's her moral character, the values we share, the experiences we've had together, all of it is now coming together. And guess what? Now I can just let go. Now I can just be completely spontaneous and emotional. Again, throw my head back and just enjoy the moment for itself. And it becomes a metaphysical, as I say, it's like art. It becomes a metaphysical experience because I'm now experiencing emotionally experiencing through concretes all of my values all at once simultaneously in the person of the lady who turned out to be my soulmate and my real partner in life. And it's got to be an integrated experience from Ayn Rand's perspective, you see. Similarly with art, what you're doing is you're experiencing your highest philosophical values. Leonard, you asked me about Leonard. In the 43 years that I've known the man is sparkling love of life. When it's a work of art, when it's music or a statue, one of the things that first struck me when I started visiting him at his home was how when you experience art with Leonard, music or sculpture, which are his favorite forms of art, he delivers himself completely over to the experience. Here is a man who could teach me the ins and outs of logic or the history of philosophy. And okay, he's not teaching me medieval philosophy. He's not teaching me, the principles of a syllogism. But here's this guy completely emotionally devoted, turning himself over. His entire consciousness is now committed to this emotional experience of a great work of art that he loves, some Michelangelo sculpture or some beautiful music. And he liked jazz too, whether it was jazz or Rachmaninoff or Viennese operetta. When he has art that he loves, he just, and heaven help you if you interrupt him. You better be in the same vibe, because it is all that vibe. We are just emotionally engrossed in this emotional experience, and it's all about the emotion now. And it's, again, there's no little shadow of doubt, there's no little shadow of uncertainty, there's no part of it is, well, should I be doing this, is there some guilt attached to something else I need to worry about? No, it's 100% all in on the value, all in on the experience. You can't go swimming with Leonard Peikoff, you can't listen to music with Leonard Peikoff, you can't tell a joke with Leonard Peikoff. And he loves humor. There is definitely a childlike quality. I always have to, when I speak to him, I come armed with some pre-prepared jokes, because he loves humor. He just loves humor. And if you're playing a game, my wife is competitive. If he and my wife are playing a game that he's just teaching her, boy, they get competitive and they're into it. And it's all about that experience. But I don't think you're able to deliver yourself over 100% completely to the emotion, to the concrete experience, if you aren't confident about all the rest of that stuff that's come behind. So it's like cashing in on all that thinking. It's the emotional upshot of all that thinking, this wonderful carefree fun that we're having, or this intense experience about art that we're having. He's all in, and it's all about enjoying the emotion of the moment. Without any, and no, please, your philosophical lecture would be inappropriate right now. And believe me, I know it rests on all that. I know that it's like an iceberg, and that there's this huge iceberg of thought and philosophy that went under it. But this is what we're experiencing here and now, and let's experience it here and now all together. It's like when people would describe Ayn Rand as follows. You'd walk into her apartment, and you could hear her waving her baton to music. She and her husband are alone in the room, and she and her husband are just there experiencing music. She's got her head thrown back. She's conducting as if she's the conductor of the orchestra of the music, and all she is just fully delivered over to that emotional experience. Ayn Rand thought that it really took a rational, thoughtful, responsible person. You don't have to be omniscient, of course not, but you have to have done the real introspection. You have to know what your values are. You have to know they're consistent and non-contradictory. When you've achieved that mentally, you are now able to achieve, and I'll quote Nathaniel Branden. That is a great article, by the way, The Psychology of Pleasure. Pleasure is a psychological necessity for human beings. But he said something to me that really stuck when I met him, again, 45 years ago. He said, think clearly so you can feel deeply, and feel deeply so you can think clearly. For Ayn Rand, those two things go together. And if you really want to have that, completely surrender yourself and let go to that emotion and fully enjoy it without any little shadow being cast on it, you have to be a rational person. You have to know that there's no little maybe, if, coulda, maybe, shoulda, would, this little doubt, this little asterisk pulling you back. If you're clear about your values in a philosophical way, if you do the correct kind of logical identification, you are the person actually capable of delivering yourself over completely and utterly to an emotion, and enjoying it and getting all of the reward and all of the motivation that emotion can give you. That's the soul of objectivism.
I can pick so many articles and essays, but I'm going to go with one that had a special meaning for me because of where I was when I read it. The essay was called the cultural or your cultural value deprivation.
Ooh.
And it had to do with when you have a culture that doesn't value the good, that doesn't have productive values, because values are the fuel of life. It'll just suck the life out of you. And being in prison was a situation where you're often rewarded for doing what's wrong and punished for doing what's good. And it makes it a very difficult thing to keep going to when you're seeing the injustices. And it wasn't injustice that I was in prison.
And more than that, relativism, universal skepticism, relativism, this cult of moral greatness, as you called it. What does it do? It takes away our
saps the life out of you.
What we need to. When Ayn Rand would say this in several essays, the way I have of describing it is she would constantly tell us to keep our evaluative mechanism well oiled. Keep the gears of that evaluative mechanism going. That's the key to motivation. That's the key to keeping you connected to your values, the importance of that rational thinking. I mean, there is no the most logical, objective process is a purposeful cognitive process. And to be connected to that, to be properly motivated for that, and to get the benefit of that emotionally, it has to be a fully integrated experience. There's no question. And Ayn Rand is telling us, no. See, it's people who have supernatural, otherworldly values that don't apply to this world. Or on the other side, the subjectivists who are telling you, well, everything's relative. Everything comes with nothing is perfect in this world. You can't really know anything. No. Ayn Rand is saying they're both enemies of you enjoying your life. Leonard wrote an excellent essay called Certainty and Happiness, explaining kind of the relationship between epistemology and joy. And they're very closely connected things. Absolutely. But Ayn Rand's advice is good. Keep your evaluative mechanism well oiled. React. Make a value judgment. Sometimes I find myself, I'll go out of my way to say, well, because we're trained to think, oh, well, that's neutral. That has there's really nothing neutral. I'm in Leonard Peikoff's living room one Saturday night, and I say, I don't understand. I understand how Ayn Rand solves the Hume is-ought problem, and I get half of it, how every ought is grounded in facts and is, but you and Rand say something different. You say every is has value implications. That is to say, every is value laden and drenched. And I'm not sure. And so I said, well, what about the number of dust particles on the dark side of the moon? How does that have any value implications to me? Leonard went on. Every fact in reality has potential implications to your life. Every fact in reality is connected to every other fact of reality. Nothing is irrelevant. Why did someone figure that out in the first place? And something sank finally in my head. There isn't a thing in this world, a dry fact in this world, that is now value neutral to me. I see it in terms of its impact on my life and on my values. I can't help it now. That's the soul of an objectivist.
In that essay, Jim, the cultural value deprivation, Ayn Rand says that, only something to the effect of only a spiritual giant can survive intact. And my friend Brent he was my cellmate. It's him. Well, when we read the essay, he looked at me and says, "Oh, you got one solution: become a spiritual giant." and I thought it was great advice. So what I'm going to ask the two of you to do, and I'm going to start with Andy, then Jim, and then I'll conclude, and then we'll give our concluding remarks. I want you to recommend a book of romantic literature. It can't be Ayn Rand, and it can't be Les Mis. And I want you to recommend a great work of literature, fuel for the soul, and I want you to not only recommend it, but tell us why you recommend it. You go first, Andy. And not your own books either, Andy. You gotta.
Well, my best book is about race war, and it's it's dark, but Reckoning is dark, but I do think it's a brilliant novel. But anyhow, before I answer your question, Michael, we've been discussing Ayn Rand's essays, which are brilliant. But regarding the soul of a romantic or the soul of an objectivist, I mean, we're talking about the greatest novelist in the history of world literature. And this is where you go for soul, for spiritual, renewal or reinvigoration, not so much her essays. For me, it's The Fountainhead. The Fountainhead is my all-time favorite book, has been since I was 16. Howard Roark is I think is the greatest hero in world literature. I might write an essay on that one day. And you notice Ayn Rand's heroes and heroines, the commitment, again, the commitment to values. And, I'll go to one of her other novels, and that's We the Living. And Kira is like, a female Howard Roark stuck behind the Iron Curtain. Nothing can crush her soul. The communists have to kill her. And it would be the same with Howard Roark. The communists crush Leo and Andre. They're not weaklings. This is what a totalitarian state does to the best people. But the military has an expression for souls like Kira or for Howard Roark, and that is, courage above and beyond the call of duty. This is above and beyond the call of duty. The ability to hold your soul together, your values together, even as a totalitarian state is crushing you. And nothing could crush her. Nothing could crush Roark. And this is, the bad guys, the Nazis or communists, have to kill them. And Tui wants Roark in prison. The communists murder Kira. This commitment to values, this recognition in every level, intellectual and emotional, that values are life. And Kira's going to escape to the West so she can pursue her career as an engineer. Presumably she would love, meet another man like Leo and love again. Values require freedom. Roark's living in a semi-free society. He can pursue his values. He can reach those people who recognize his great buildings until we can't stop him. Freedom necessary to achieve values. But Ayn Rand's, heroes and heroines, they are passionately committed to values. This is why it boggles my mind that there are objectivists who, have prefer ITOE, Introduction to Objectivist Epistemology, to The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, and or two, have never read her novels. They've only read her nonfiction, and they don't want to read her novels. Now, this is a small percentage of objectivists, I know, but I mean, no, this is somebody who has the intellect of an objectivist, but does not have the soul of a romantic. So anyway, if anybody out there, you want to learn what the soul of an objectivist is, read Ayn Rand's novels, and you don't have to study them. Immerse yourself in the lives of her heroes and heroines, and just have that full, integrated, intellectual, emotional experience of Howard Roark's quest for values, and how he's indomitable and nothing can stop him. I mean, this is how you identify the soul of an objectivist. And then about Ayn Rand herself, what kind of soul did it take to create these characters? What kind of a soul did it take to create Howard Roark? What kind of soul did it take to create Kira Ogwinova? And Dominique Franken, my all-time favorite heroine. I wrote an essay about her in the Objective Standard, a few years ago. Why is she so, disturbed? Because she thinks the world is so corrupt that values can't be achieved. That the great value is like Henry Cameron was crushed, and Howard Roark's going to be the same. So you see values everywhere. If I had to pick one word for the soul of an objectivist, it would be values or valuer. So I just had to get that in there. Ayn Rand's a novelist, first, foremost, and always. She's the greatest novelist in world literature. Her essays are magnificent. All of her nonfiction is. But she's the greatest novelist who ever lived, guys. I mean, this is where we go to identify the soul of a hero, the soul of a valuer, the soul of an objectivist. What book would I recommend? Jack Schaefer's novel, Shame. I love I love that book. It's small. I mean, is it as brilliant a novel, let's say, as Dostoevsky? No. Dostoevsky's, by any objective criteria of literature, I think Dostoevsky is a greater novelist, but he is a real sin stressing. I mean, the value man is a sinner. His characters are all murderers. Raskolnikov and the brothers Karamazov. They have to expiate their guilt by taking up the cross and and atoning for their sins. He's a great novelist, but that's not somewhere to go to find spiritual renewal. But great novelist though. and Jack Shane was very good. Shane is a very good novel by any objective criteria. It's a very good novel, but I love it beyond its literary credentials because, first of all, Shane is such a hero, and I'm a hero worshiper. And he's he not only his prowess, with fists or guns, or this is the guy you want. If there's bad guys threatening you, this is the guy you want. He is a bad dude, but he's all good, and he loves his direct family, all of them. Joe, Marion, Bobby, he loves all of them. They're really good people. That Joe is a real, in Ayn Rand's terms, is a productive giant. He's developing a new method of he's raising crops to feed the cattle, not having them feed on grass. He's an innovator, and the kid, in a certain way, the book is about hero worship because the kid hero worships Shane. Shane wants him to hero worship his dad. And the real question is, well, who is most worthy of hero worship? And I think both of them are in different ways. There's the producer, and then there's the protector of the producers, and we need both of them. We need the great, the Andrew Carnegies and John D. Rockefellers and everything, the great productive giants of American history, and then we need the U.S. Marines, to defend them against Nazis, communists, and jihadists. So Shane is a book about hero worship, and it's about values. Shane wants to hang up his guns. He's had enough of being a gunfighter, but he loves his family. This is a tremendous value to him. The bad guys, without his intercession, they're going to kill him. They're going to kill Joe. They're going to widow Marion. They're going to orphan Bobby. He can't let that happen. So he's got a real inner value conflict, but he can't. He doesn't. Shane gives up a lot. He returns to gunfighting, which he wanted to relinquish, but what he gives up is not nearly as much of a value for him as what he defends and attains, saving the life of Joe Starrett and keeping the Starrett family together. It's so benevolent. The word benevolent is what it chokes me up. That's what I love about Shane. Now, anybody wants spiritual renewal, read Shane.
All right, Jim, what do you got? What are you coming with?
Oh God, he really picked a good one there. Shane.
I've loved that book for a long time, Jim.
Yeah. I think you were one of the people who actually recommended it to me, such that I ended up reading it many decades separately.
Now I got to read it. I know that.
No, you do, Michael. It is a real thrilling inspiration. And there are good books. The problem with non-Rand literature, and Howard Rourke is a hero unlike any other hero that you'll ever see in literature, because most of the time altruism comes in to taint your heroes in a Hugo novel, or I was going to say, of course, the classic example. They asked Ayn Rand what your favorite play was, and she said, or three favorite plays, and she said Cyrano de Bergerac, Cyrano de Bergerac, Cyrano de Bergerac. But again, it's like Hugo. Cyrano is affected by Christian altruism, and that prevents him from even giving the heroine Roxanne a chance at happiness, or himself a chance at happiness. And it comes out to a tragic sort of end. Even though he's one of the coolest, most badass heroes, he can compose poetry while he's fighting a duel. He's just like the coolest guy. I mean, when you read Cyrano de Bergerac, it's like, oh my God, this guy is just a superhero. And he's committed to his values in such a serious way. But you see how his lack of self-esteem and his altruism sort of undercut him. And unfortunately, in most non-Rand literature, the hero, to be heroic, has to have a taint or a touch of altruism to his heroism. And what's great about Shane, what he just said, is that it's very little. He's defending real values here on Earth, and he knows what his values are that he's defending. And he would like to hang up his guns, but no, you're not going to mess with my values. He knows, right? He's even if it's a hard call to do, he's going to make that hard call, and that's what makes him a hero. So look for books like that. Look like Shane, where the altruism element of the hero is minimized, but the intense value pursuit of a hero is still there, like Cyrano, is the way I would put it. If that makes sense?
Sure.
And Inherit the Wind also comes to mind, Jim.
God.
You know, it's a
There
great
are a
play.
lot. There's a lot
Yeah.
of good literature.
Yeah,
Aerosmith.
yeah.
Harold
We got to
the-
do that movie in our movie.
Oh yeah.
cast.
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
we will. We will.
There are some good books and good movies out there.
Yeah.
Oh, take Casablanca. I love the movie Casablanca, but in the end, there's that the heroism
Yeah.
of
You know,
Rick.
I
Gotta come with
yeah,
altruism.
I did a film course, Jim. You know, and we're talking about Casablanca, and I said there's a moral principle, you know, that emerges from Casablanca, and everybody said what? And then I said, if you're a heterosexual male, you do not give up Ingrid Bergman. That's right. That's right. Now that's a moral principle, if ever there was
it's
one.
self-sacrifice.
Yeah, no, no, not when Ingrid Bergman's involved. No, you hold on to her.
Yeah, well, Ingrid Bergman's that film, you know, in the screenplay for Casablanca, I think Ayn Rand described it as the quote almost perfect screenplay. I mean, the redemption of Rick, it's about the moral redemption of Rick. He rediscovers moral principles. But that's contrasted with his, I only care about myself. I don't care about anything else. And then he ends up by saying the lives of three little people don't amount to a hill of beans in this world. Okay, so even the best romantic literature, whether it's film or novels or plays, the problem is it can be intensely inspiring, but it's tainted more often than not with a degree of altruism. So I would say go for the stuff that's least tainted with altruism. Inherit the Wind, Shane, those are great examples of literature that is at least the altruism is put aside enough that we can see the greatness that's being defended. It's reason or greatness or achievement, or at least in the case, say, of Casablanca or Cyrano de Bergerac I think is much greater even than Casablanca, but at least there, the intense heroism of the guy is what's highlighted, his greatness, his virtues, not his vices. And that's what makes literature great for me. It is, I have to agree with Ayn Rand. I mean, I'll read a novel because it's interesting. Dostoevsky was a master. He was a master of handling psychological and ethical themes through characters and plot. I mean, he revolutionized literature as far as I'm concerned. Ayn Rand took the same skill set, in effect, as Dostoevsky, and she applied it in The Fountainhead, handling ethical and psychological themes with the same brilliance of Dostoevsky, only, maybe even greater, only her sense of life is positive. The hero can win. We're talking about positive values. There doesn't need to be misery and suffering. Humanity isn't stuck in a sewer someplace. And, rather than have this dark view of humanity and life, which Dostoevsky has, she combines his writing skill in handling psychological and ethical themes, only it's with a hero who belongs on Earth. Howard Roark.
And Jim, and you don't have to murder miserable old porn brokers, in order to assert yourself as a great man.
So for me,
you build buildings. You don't take axes and crush in
exactly.
skull.
I mean, I can read Dostoevsky, and it's a powerful experience. You get sucked in. Somehow he sucks you in by an axe murderer, and somehow I get sucked into the story. Me as a prosecutor, I'm horrified at the idea of an axe murderer. I think everyone would be, but the point is, nonetheless, Dostoevsky can suck me.
And you still empathize with Raskolnikov. You want to see what happens to him. You want to see him redeem himself.
You wanted to redeem himself.
He not only murdered the miserable pawnbroker, but he's her completely innocent sister. He crashed in her skull.
Exactly. So if you want all the power of the psychological insight of Dostoevsky, only focused on a real hero who belongs on Earth and can succeed on Earth and whose values are achievable. And he does achieve them in an uncompromising way, full integrity way, which is you're not going to find in Dostoevsky. Read The Fountainhead. Ayn Rand excels Dostoevsky in his skill, and it's a positive sense of life world, where I'm talking about the achievement of values and greatness. That's what Dominique is all about. For Dominique, great architecture is sacred. It's so sacred that to pollute it, to the very image of Howard Roark's building having a dirty laundry line hung out in front of it, to her is such a sacrilege that she wants to protect that greatness from the world. And
that's why Roark
was like, I think, inside.
Well, she said Dominique was herself in a bad mood, right?
Yeah.
But this is why Rourke loves Dominique. This is why I love Dominique. Her idealism, her just simply unconflicted. Well, she's very conflicted, but her commitment to values, her commitment to man at his highest and best, undiluted commitment to idealism, to man at his highest and best. That's what I love. That's why I love Dominique, and that's certainly why Rourke loved her.
In her introduction, the 25th anniversary, the Fountainhead was in continuous hardened paperback print for 25 years. So her publisher said, write an introduction for the 25th anniversary edition. And there she talked about how certain religious concepts we think of as religious concepts, really have application to this world. Something is sacred, having reverence for something. And Dominique represents that. To her, greatness is sacred. So Dominique is reverent in her worship of
yes, she is. Yes.
And so what Ayn Rand is trying to say, there's this one line where she says, well, I want to correct it. I say Howard Rourke is an atheist, but there's another character who says, Mr. Rourke, you're in your own way, you're a profoundly religious man. And he affirms, yes, I am. What Ayn Rand is saying there is, I take with the same religious seriousness this world, the values of the here and now on this world, what I can achieve here, the happiness I can achieve here, that is what I treat as sacred, not some supernatural dimension, not some irrational mystic idealism. No, it's this world, but it's the same level of intensity with the feeling. It's the feeling that this is sacred. This is something that I can worship, that feeling of looking up to something that Ayn Rand so yearned for.
Right.
That's the soul of objectivism.
Right. The achievement of values on this earth. And what gives it a sense of urgency is we get one shot at it. We don't get, life's not a dress rehearsal for something beyond. We don't get a second chance. If you're real religious, you think you might go to heaven, and have it. No, that's false. We get one shot at it. And so that makes it even more monumentally sacred. And anybody who opposes it makes him even more monumentally evil. Because he's opposing the only chance we have at joy and happiness and fulfillment, which is on this earth. And Ayn Rand, you talked about the emotional life of Ayn Rand. That's why she was so enraged. She was so angry, righteous anger against not just the Nazis, communists, and jihadists, although certainly them too, but the philosophers who made it possible. Kant, Hegel, Marx, and so on.
Because she could see in that abstraction. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. She could see in that abstraction all of her values. Yeah. The skyscrapers, the music she loved, her husband. She could see them all being involved in the issues at hand. And so it either inspires intense admiration or intense anger.
Right. And her freedom to write The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged and sell them.
Right.
Publish them and sell them.
Exactly. So like Leonard says, it's as if when someone expressed some high abstraction in philosophy she disagreed with, she saw it as taking a sledgehammer to all of her values. It's as if you're attacking my husband physically, attacking skyscrapers, attacking my music, attacking my freedom to write.
Yes.
All at once.
She's right. She's right.
I was going to go with 93 by Victor Hugo, but I think that's too easy. So I'm actually going to go with one of my favorites. It's an absolutely wonderful story, happy ending. The female protagonist is a free thinker, absolutely brilliant, strong independent streak. And the male lead is just a beacon of integrity.
This is going to be a Jane Austen novel?
This is going to be a Jane Austen novel. This is Pride and Prejudice.
Okay.
Elizabeth Bennet and her independence and her absolute brilliance and her character and Mr. Darcy's integrity is just, you just want to be like this guy. Now, like Jim says, obviously they're not egoists, right?
Right.
They're living in, early 19th century England. But nonetheless, the values that they hold and what they hold to be right, they do it, they fight for it, and they believe in it.
I mean, there is an egoism there, Michael. They stand up to a lot of opposition.
Oh, sure.
Including from Darcy's battle axe aunt.
Yes.
to marry and
Yes.
and consummate their love. That's definitely egoistic, even if Jane Austen wasn't thinking in those terms, even if Jane Austen didn't construe it in those terms.
And you can find heroism in books that are not philosophically objectivist at all.
Sure.
You can find a degree of romantic heroism. Jane Eyre is the book I'd pick from that author. Wow, what an interesting character she is. Or how about Nathaniel Hawthorne's Scarlet Letter? I mean, there's another interesting heroine. There's another interesting moral case. Now,
hold on, Jim. Hold on. I got to get this out. Speaking of Nathaniel Hawthorne, when we were together, I asked you if you could remember a book that was basically the Americanization of Greek mythology. The author I was thinking of was Nathaniel Hawthorne. I believe the book is The Tanglewood Tales. And it's for children, and it's the Americanization of Greek mythology. But go ahead, finish what you were saying about the Scarlet Letter.
I was just saying that don't write off literature simply because the author may have some philosophical idea you disagree with, maybe some kind of altruist, or may have some Christian theology.
Hawthorne's a Puritan, but it's a great novel, right?
Exactly.
It's a great novel.
It's focused on values.
Mm-hmm.
It's focused on, in that sense, it's like ancient Greek tragedy, in the sense that, wait a minute, this woman is suffering for her virtue. And see, Leonard Peikoff, he did a whole course on literature that's philosophically dubious, but that you can get a lot out of. Whether it's way back Sophocles' Antigone. Look, I don't agree with Antigone's religious viewpoint or her ethics, but I get inspired by looking at Antigone's absolute commitment to her values. She takes values in a very serious way, life and death commitment. It can give her joy or it can destroy her. And if the society is unjust, her commitment to her values will destroy her. They'll turn her virtue against herself. So she suffers because of her virtue, the essence of tragedy. So I'll even say tragedies can be a powerful We the Living is a classic tragedy, for example. Sometimes a tragedy can be very, Aristotle knew it. It's catharsis, can give you this gut-wrenching feeling. But to do that, it's got to appeal to morality. It's got to be, you walk out of the theater saying, I'm recommitted to never letting this injustice happen again. I was so crushed by the heroine getting it in this tragedy for being virtuous, that what we want to make sure is that we don't pit our laws against virtue. That our politicians don't make having a value commitment and a moral conscience cut against you. And there's a whole range of literature like that really, and only literature can really concretize that in that way. That's why it's no paradox at all that Professor Bernstein is both a novelist and an abstract philosopher. The two go together properly. Good literature will invoke our value mechanism necessarily to be good literature. The more powerful, the more important the value.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. I taught a course at Marist College, philosophical themes in great literature. And it was cross-referenced between the philosophy and literature programs. And I used great literature. I used Antigone. I used Anthem. I used some of Hawthorne's stories, Rappaccini's Daughter. For example, use great literature as a means to discuss and explain philosophic principles. I think it's the best way to teach philosophy, to tell you the truth. Although most philosophy professors in the academy are too rationalistic to appreciate it and want to do it.
I can't imagine a linguistic analyst ask the first semicolon of any sentence, much less write a novel that can inspire anyone.
All right, guys, this has been absolutely wonderful, and I hope we can do this again, the three of us, because it's a great
I'd
conversation.
love to.
Professor Bernstein.
Next time we'll discuss, what's the soul of the Kantian. Yeah, that'll be fun.
Oh, come on, don't put me through that.
A darker episode.
Very long German sentences. All right. So, Andy, where can they find you? Where can they find your books?
Well, my website is andrewbernstein.net. They could find, about all my books, including the novel we briefly discussed, Reckoning, which I think is the best thing I've ever written, and the Brooklyn Stories, which I know, Jim, you appreciated. So andrewbernstein.net. Now I'm writing for fun also. under the pen name Tris Power. I'm writing a series of hard-boiled detective novels about Tony Just. And so TonyJust.net is, the website to go to. Volume 1 of the Tony Just saga, Red Meat Village, was just published, available from Amazon. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, but AndrewBernstein.net for all the serious writing, and TonyJust.net for the purely fun writing.
Awesome. Thank you. And Jim?
Well, if you're interested in my book on Christianity at www.creatingchrist.com, I also regularly appear on the Ayn Rand Center United Kingdom podcasts. We do I lead a discussion group in all of Leonard Peikoff's courses there for paid members. So if you're interested, please come on over to Ayn Rand Center UK, where we discuss objectivism all the time. I'm very active on social media, Facebook in particular, where I'm answering questions about history and philosophy just about every day. James Stevens Valliant, Facebook. So, and of course, for some reason, you keep having me back, so you can probably find me here in the near future as well.
Yes, you guys, it has been an absolute delight. Thank you so much. Both my favorite guest, my favorite objectivist. You guys are absolutely wonderful, and I'm very, very happy to call you both friends. You are extraordinary human beings, both.
Well, thank you. But same to you. And you're a living example of free will. The way you've completely rehabilitated your character. So thumbs up for you. And I love being on your show and being on with Jim and discussing this topic. Yeah, this was a lot of fun.
A lot of fun. Let's do it again.
We definitely will.
You truly are not just a friend. You're my brother. So thank you
so much. For now, this is the Rational Egoist signing out. I'm Michael Liebowitz. Till next time.